In this video, I'm going to talk about a trick that film composers use to create different moods and emotions with harmony. Once you get this simple technique into your vocabulary, you'll find it easier to get away from simple diatonic harmony and make your music more colorful and expressive. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ryan. I'm a composer for film, TV, and video games, and this channel is where we try to break down and figure out how writing music works. For more videos about music theory, composing, and all that other good stuff, please remember to subscribe. So today I'm talking about chromatic mediant chords, or chords from different keys that are a third apart. If you use these chords, you can get enhanced emotional effects that you can't really get from regular diatonic harmony. So when I say the chords are a third apart, I mean that the root of each chord is a third away from each other. That could be a major third or a minor third. So from C major, you could go up a major third to E, E minor or E major, or you can go up a minor third to E flat major, E flat minor. In the same way from C, you could go down a minor third to A to get either A minor or A major, and you could go down a major third to A flat. So you could have either A flat major or A flat minor. And for our purposes, we're really focusing on the non-diatonic chords. So yes, you could go down a third from C major to A minor, but both of those chords are from the key of C or the key of G, so it doesn't really count. They already have a relationship. We're thinking more like C major down to A major, where there is no key that has both of those chords native to them, so that'll be a more interesting sound. So the way you come up with these chords is you pick your starting chord and you move either a major or minor third up or down to the quality that you want, whether that's major or minor, and we'll get into that. I haven't really found a good rule for when you might want to move up or down a third. I think it depends on the context, and really you should just try the different options out when you're writing and see which sounds good for the moment. But with the right combinations and chord movements, you can come up with some really interesting expressive sounds. So there's this idea, which I've talked about before, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about it again, in which major chords from outside your key feel more major, and minor chords from outside your key feel more minor. So we all know that stereotypically a major chord is happy and bright, and a minor chord is sad and dark. So when you use a major chord from outside your key, it's even more happy, it's brighter, it's stronger. So there are 4 different major minor combinations we can use, and so for the rest of this video, we'll kind of look at each one of those. We could have major to major to minor, minor to major, and minor to minor. Before we get into the examples, I want to point out that this is non-functional harmony. So we're not talking about tonic, subdominant, dominant, chord progression relationships. This isn't about kind of structural points that lead us beginning, middle, and end. This is more about using harmony for color. So when we're going to the C major to the E flat major, we don't have to think about, how does the progression work in the form? It's more about how do these different colors contrast and create certain moods or emotions within that context. The emphasis is not on harmonic movement, but on color and effect. So let's start with going from a major chord up or down a third to another major chord. I'll use this effect when I want something heroic, super happy, bold, maybe royal. Maybe if I'm doing a comedy track and I want to keep it pretty light and quirky, then I might use this effect. So here I'm going for like a fantasy royal fanfare in the trumpets. We start on a D major chord, and I'll move up a minor third to an F major chord. So D major and F major are from different keys because D major has an F sharp in it, not an F natural. But notice that they do also have that A in common. So here's what something like this might sound like. Hear how that F feels very bold and rich and strong. Let's do another example, but this time we'll go down instead. So in this example, I'm using 2 different major chords from different keys in a quieter way to create kind of this magical, mysterious sensation. It's not meant to be dark and threatening, so I'm using 2 different major chords. Notice that I'm using the C as a pedal tone in the bass for both chords because the C is in the chord of C major and it's in the A flat major. So the next thing I want to look at is major chords to a minor chord a third away from outside the key. So here's an example of going from a major chord down a major third to a minor chord from outside the key. So we're going from A major down to F minor. And in this case, there are no common tones between the 2 triads. So of course the main thing to notice is just how dark it feels when we get to that F minor. That F minor is really unexpected and much more sinister than if we had used just a regular diatonic chord from the key of A minor, like a B minor or something. The F minor with its chromatic tones that don't really belong in the key of A major add to that kind of sinister, menacing, not quite right, I don't belong here quality. I use the major to major much more often than I use the major to minor, because in most cases I'm trying to create an overall happy feel instead of going for a specific moment of really happy to really dark all of a sudden. So when I'm writing a track, I tend to focus more on like types, but there are cases where you can use both. Now let's look at some examples of minor to minor. So here we have an example of minor chord to minor chord from outside the diatonic key. In this case, I both went down a third and up a third to show that you can go both ways and you can get some interesting effects when you do. So here we get a very kind of classic bad guy villain sound, maybe from like a Star Wars movie, and it's very clearly sinister and dark because of those minor chords and that extra minor quality that we're getting from that movement by thirds. That B flat minor, that E flat minor don't really belong to G minor, and so they're giving us those kind of strange chromatic tones, making the whole thing darker overall. And then the last one we have is minor to major. So coming up with an example from a minor going to a major was a bit tricky because it's not really a scenario you find yourself in a lot where you have a theme that you want overall dark with these punchy, bright moments of happiness. So what I've come up with here is that it's not really super sad or dark, it's a little light. I did it in 3/4 on the harp, so it's kind of floating along and then going from the D minor to the F sharp major or from the D minor to the B major is a little more gentle, maybe a little romantic or smooth, as opposed to just going from like dark and sinister to happy. But like I said, it was a bit of a trickier one to get to. For another video about non-diatonic harmony, check out my video on secondary dominance, and I'll see you in the next one.